Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to discuss the federal government's update to Canada's climate plan. I want to be clear, Alberta's government fully supports taking action on climate change and emission management. However, this action must be taken in a way that attracts investment, maintains competitiveness, and does not strand and stress out our job creators, especially given our current economic circumstances when our industries need support now more than ever. Following this morning's announcement, we were pleased to see Canada's decision to drop the proposed clean fuel standard gaseous and liquid regulations, which is something Alberta has been advocating for over 3 years. Advocating for, I should say. Alberta continues to work with Canada on some of the other suggested changes to the clean fuel standards. Our suggestions are intended to address potential unintended consequences of the regulation, like losing investment and revenue to other jurisdictions and exposure for our trade-exposed industries. As we have said about net zero and related ambitions, action on climate and emission management must be taken in a way that ensures the competitiveness of Alberta job creators. The proof will be in the details of this policy, which Alberta will review and provide initial feedback on when the draft regulations and Gazette become available. The federal government is following Alberta's lead by providing additional climate funding, particularly for technology and innovation. The federal government is well positioned to provide these type of supports and partnerships with the provinces in Canada, and it needs to if it wants to achieve its goals. The new Strategic Innovation Fund, Net Zero Accelerator, which includes $3 billion over 5 years, can complement the great work Alberta is doing through our Tier Fund to attract investment. Now, with that said, there's something we're not too happy about today. What we have learned today is the federal Liberals will more than triple their national carbon tax. This is yet another attack on Alberta's economy and on Alberta's jurisdiction. On a provincial level, Alberta continues to make real progress on reducing emissions through our TIER program, methane reduction initiatives, and our world-leading progress on hydrogen and carbon capture, utilization, and storage, all of which will be necessary for Canada to achieve its environmental goals. On a federal level, the Prime Minister continues to impose his Ottawa knows best attitude on Alberta at a time when Albertans can least afford it. Alberta's concern about the effect that this will have on jobs. An increase on the price of gasoline by 40% or 40 cents a litre will make it more expensive for hardworking Albertans to drive to work, to heat their homes, and to put food on the table. This, in addition to the federal government's ongoing job-killing policies and regulations in Bill C-48 and C-69, are unacceptable to this province. Alberta's government remains laser-focused on Alberta's recovery plan, supporting families and small businesses, and finding our way back to growth and prosperity coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. This includes our history-making $750 million investment in programs and projects that are cutting emissions, supporting upwards of 9,000 jobs, and injecting $1.9 billion into Alberta's economy. This is the largest technology and innovation investment Alberta has seen yet. Alberta is hard at work turning private and public investment into game-changing technology, emission reduction, and economic resilience. We have the innovation, and we have the infrastructure, and we have the expertise. The fact remains that any action the federal government takes on climate and emission management must be within its own jurisdiction. Alberta is best positioned to manage emissions from our various unique industries. Our province is working and will continue to work hard to cut emissions, and it's equally important to set up our job creators for success. We have been leaders on emission management and taking action on climate within our jurisdiction for 2 decades, and we plan to keep it that way. I can assure you that Alberta will continue to meet our environmental obligations our way, with a focus on technology and innovation, making sure that there is a future for hydrocarbons and continuing our global leadership as an environmentally friendly energy-producing superpower. My message to Albertans is that your government will continue to fight this unconstitutional tax grab at the Supreme Court, and we will always defend your interest against these kinds of attacks. And with that, I'll be happy to take some questions.
All right, folks, it sounds like we have a number of people on the line, so we're just going to do one question, no follow-up. Operator, can you put through the first question, please?
First is Emma Graney with the Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, g'day, Minister. I did want to ask you about clean fuel standards. You said off the top of the bat there that this is kind of a positive for Alberta, that they've taken out solid and gaseous fuels. Am I right in saying that you're happy about that? And I'm wondering if you can expand a little on what you mean when it is a good news for Alberta taking those, just concentrating on liquid fuels, and also what other changes you would like to see and what you're pushing for as a province. Cheers,
Well,
mate.
great question, Emma. From Alberta's perspective, and certainly from industries in our province's perspective, the clean fuel standards that was originally being proposed would have had significant and long-term negative impacts on our industries, particularly those that were trade exposed. It would have essentially been a layering on of another carbon tax on top of a carbon tax. It was completely unacceptable, and we had heard loud and clear from industry would cause much investment to flee this province and the jobs that go with that investment. And so we have been working hard as a province. I can tell you the Department of Alberta Environment and Parks has been working closely with Minister Wilkinson's department in Ottawa on our concerns on this issue. And so we do see this as a positive step forward with some clear changes that have been advocated for strongly by the province of Alberta and by our industries. Now we need to look at the rest of this when it comes out and it's gazetted. That's going to be critical because until we see that, we don't know exactly the full impact of it. And so we'll have more to say, and we will continue to fight to make sure that the clean fuel standards does not hurt our industry or our province. And still from our perspective, we should not move forward with it at all. But at the least, we need to continue to make sure that it will not negatively impact job creators in our province.
Excellent. Can we put through the next question, please?
This is Kelly Kreiderman with the Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi, Minister. I'm wondering what is your main concern with the carbon price going to $170 a ton by 2030? Is it the effect on Alberta residents, or is it the effect on investment in industry? There are some people who say it can provide certainty that, of course, investors and industry are looking for. What would you say to that?
Well, providing certainty that you're going to be taxed to the point where you're going to struggle to pay your bills if you're an Albertan is not very helpful. I'm concerned about both ends of that. I'm concerned about the economic impact, the impact on jobs, and certainly on everyday Albertans as they buy groceries and go about their lives. We are in the middle of an unprecedented situation in the world with the global pandemic. We're also in the middle of an even more unprecedented situation in our province with the largest energy decrease, price of energy decrease in the history of the world, an ongoing price war across the world when it comes to oil and gas, and then the pandemic on top of that. And this is not the time to even be considering increasing the cost of living for the people of Alberta. I find this most troubling from this announcement, that it appears the federal government have been spending significant amounts of time inside Ottawa in the middle of this pandemic focused on figuring out how to tax Canadians more at the very moment that we should be focused on getting everybody back to work. So we have significant concerns about that, and I want to reiterate, we will continue to fight it. From our position was clear in the election. We promised Albertans that we would fight this all the way to the Supreme Court, and we have fought the carbon tax all the way to the Supreme Court, and we'll wait to see what the rulings are in that regard. But Alberta's position will continue to be that focusing on technology and innovation, working with our large emitters, working with our industries and the great innovative potential that they have is the way forward on this, not taxing hockey moms and hockey dads.
Excellent. Operator, can we put through the next question, please?
Next is Jason Markisoff with Maclean's. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Minister. What would be your plan to fight this past potential loss at the Supreme Court, which seems to be what this federal government is banking on by putting forward this plan at this point?
Well, the federal government may be banking on that, but we had a historical win here at the Court of Appeals in Alberta. We believe that we have a significant case that was presented to the Supreme Court. And if I was the federal government, I would not count my chickens before they hatch. We will continue to see the results of that. If we are unsuccessful, obviously as a province, we will have a discussion with Albertans and amongst ourselves on the best way to protect our province. But I can assure Albertans that their government will do everything possible to protect them from these increases that the Trudeau Liberals are forcing on Albertans when it comes to a carbon tax inside our province.
Excellent. Operator, can we put through the next question, please?
Next is Sarah Ryan with Global News. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, Minister. Thank you so much for your time. Why does your government continue to oppose the carbon tax when many investors and businesses, including giants like Shell, are in support of the carbon tax?
Well, we want to work hard with job creators like Shell inside our province, but at the end of the day, our number one responsibility is the people of Alberta. And so in my own constituency of Rimbey, Rocky Mount, House Sundre, the reality is that they don't want a carbon tax. They don't want to go to the pump and see a 40-cent increase per liter for gasoline as they try to drive their kids to hockey games. We see the carbon tax as a tax on everything within our economy, that it will raise the price of everything from gas to groceries, and instead our focus is on real results. We've seen that this year through the tier investment this year, we're $750 million from the Alberta government, when matched with industry support, about a $1.9 billion investment, resulting in somewhere between 40 and 45 megatons of reduction by 2050. Those are real actions, and we do not believe that taxing people from going about their daily lives or heating their homes is the path forward, and that will continue to be the position of this province.
Excellent. Operator, can we put through the next question, please?
This is Chris Varco with the Calgary Herald. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, Minister. I have two separate questions. The first one is you'd mentioned that this is going to have an impact upon jobs in Alberta and on the energy industry. What can you quantify that? How many jobs is your government estimating this is going to impact, and how? Separately, that's the first question. Separately, you talked about the fact that investment may leak out of the province and in other jurisdictions, and I'm wondering what your government's thoughts are on a border carbon adjustment tax.
So on the first question, we do have some preliminary analysis that I have not had time to look at in great detail. We've been in a cabinet meeting this morning, so I'm going to need to take some time to look at that with my officials. But the initial estimate of job loss and GDP loss is significant, and we need to do a proper analysis of that to be able to make sure that we understand it. And some of the details of what the federal government has announced today are probably needed to be able to complete that. What is clear to me, though, is that this will result in job losses inside our province. And any job losses inside this province is completely and utterly unacceptable at any time, but particularly when we're fighting a global pandemic and the largest economic downturn since the Great Depression. It's just not a direction that we should be going. And I would strongly encourage the federal government to think about the impact of this, not just on Albertans, but on Canadians in every province inside this country. In regards to discussions around some of the stuff that's in there on border credits, I will say, obviously, there's not a lot of detail yet. We need to go and look at that, and we will. But what I think is significant with that is that, in my mind, is finally an acknowledgement from the federal government that carbon leakage is a real thing. And this province has been sounding the alarm about climate policies, and particularly the impacts of the carbon tax causing climate leakage. And for the federal government to put that in there, they're at least acknowledging finally that climate leakage is a real thing. Now, whether or not they're able to address it with those policies is a whole other thing. And we'll have a look at it, and we'll have more to say after we're able to analyze it in the coming days.
Operator, can we put through the next caller, please?
Questions from Robert Tuttle with Bloomberg News. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering if this aggressive carbon tax could convince an incoming Biden administration to allow Keystone XL to go through, or if this general more aggressive stance on the environment could convince them. Do you think it'd be worth it?
Keystone XL should go through, period, because there's been strong commitments that were already made previously by the American government. We are thankful to our federal government for their support on what is a significant international trade issue from our perspective. Again, we take our environmental obligations in this province seriously. We are continuing to work on this issue. In fact, I would submit to you that we are the only ones working within the province of Alberta this year on this issue. This year alone, as I said, we have a $1.9 billion investment on technology in partnership with industry in our province to move forward on emission reduction in a significant way. We have been reaching out to the federal government during that period of time for support and for potentials for partnership. So that I am excited within some of their documents today that maybe we can finally get moving on that. And from our perspective, Canada's a little late to the party, but we're welcoming them to that role, and we will have more to say on how ways that we think that they can help us be able to meet our goals. But from our perspective, we have the way forward right here in Alberta. Our world-class industry, our engineers, those people who have been working on this issue in our province for a very long time are the way forward, not only for our province, but the way forward for the world when it comes to climate change.
Excellent. I think that wraps it. Thanks very much, folks.
Thanks for your time.